this coniferous forest and I'm searching for fatwood. I'm going to show you the easiest way that I know to find fatwood. And what I'm doing is I'm just looking on the ground here, searching for pine knots or rotten pine trees that have rotted away, and the pine knots and the pine branches have stayed behind, and they're just lying on the forest floor here. I'll look around here for a minute and we'll see if we can find some. They're not too hard to find. This is definitely a pine knot. I was just walking and it's just lying here on the forest floor. You can tell it's a pine knot. You've got the branch, which has straight grain coming out, and then the tree trunk would have been right here, and this is the knot that was going into the tree trunk. And you can see that grain is all twisted and going the opposite direction of the branch. If I get my saw out here, we can test it just to make sure, but I guarantee this is fatwood. See that dark, rich amber color? That's how you know it's fatwood. And if you smell it, smells really good. Smells like turpentine. Got a really fragrant smell. And it's more dense than regular pine wood because that resin has collected and solidified right there. What happens is when a pine tree dies, the resin is collected in the knots and in the roots. And if the tree has fallen over, or even if it's standing, as the tree rots away, the fatwood stays. That resin is really resistant to rot. That resin makes this wood waterproof, and so it's really good, and it's flammable. And if all your wood is damp, if it's been raining, but you have fatwood, if you can find it or if you carry it with you, it's really good for starting fires in damp conditions. This is exactly what I'm looking for when I'm looking for fatwood. This piece is a little rotten on the outside, but it's solid underneath that. And I would bet that this is fatwood. Here's what I'm talking about. Pine knot right here. Pine knot right here. There's pine knot up here. Pine knot right here. The rest of the log is just rotting away. But these have that resin in them, and so they don't rot. This is a big piece of fatwood. This branch has resin all the way up into here. I can tell because I saw it was broken off, and it's got that dark amber color, that dark color to the wood. It's shiny when you cut into it. It's got that rich turpentine smell. Okay, these are those pine knots I collected. just going to take my folding saw and cut into them and see whether we got some good fatwood or not. I can already tell by the sawdust coming out that this is good fatwood. But let me get this in half and I'll show you what I mean. Excellent. That is all fatwood. Now this one, I'm not too sure. It doesn't feel, this feels hefty and dense. It feels heavy. This one doesn't feel quite as heavy, but it looks like a pine knot, so I'm gonna test it out and see. Oh, I can tell there's definitely fatwood in there. I'm going to cut the branch off where this is the knot, this is the branch. This won't have as much fatwood in it, especially the farther out it gets, so I'm just going to cut this off. The outside of this big one I found is rotten. You can just see it's just crumbling away. But I'm going to cut through it and hopefully there's some good fatwood in here. Super really good fatwood. So this whole thing, if I can just break away this outer rotten stuff, this is a big chunk of fatwood. Take the spine of your knife, if you have a sharp 90-degree spine on your knife, you can just scrape that fatwood down really nicely, and it just makes really, really fine scrapings. Take your fire steel, instantly. Alright, so I collected quite a bit of that fatwood. I'm going to take it home with me and put it in my bushcraft kit. I like to break up small pieces and keep them in a fire tin. And that way, if it's rainy or wet, fatwood will get any fire going. When I'm out there and the wood is soaking wet, I break it down, split it to try to get to the driest wood in the middle. And if I can't light that, I carve that down into feather sticks, and if I can't light that, I get some fatwood out of my kit. And the fatwood burns hot, and it'll burn even when it's wet. It's got so much resin in it that it's waterproof, basically. And so it's able to get it's able to burn long enough to dry out your wet wood and eventually get your fire going. And like I said, it's waterproof. That's why the rest of the pine tree rots away, but the fatwood stays. It's impregnated with resin, it's highly flammable, and as the rest of the tree gets wet and moisture and mold and the fungus eats it away, nothing can touch that fatwood. So this is what those pine knots look like when you find them on the forest floor. You'll see the pine branch has the grain going this way, and then the pine knot's going to be usually twisted and have the grain going a different way. And that's how you can tell you found a pine knot. Right here was a branch and the grain is twisting down here. It's all twisted. I can tell that that was a pine knot. Now, if you can't find any pine knots, there's other sources of fatwood. Pine knots aren't the only place to find fatwood. They're just the easiest for me to find because they're literally everywhere on the forest floor as I'm walking around. But other places you can find fatwood is if a pine tree has been blown over by the wind and it's dead. Well, all the sap settles in the roots. So I've already showed that in a video on my channel years ago. We found a down pine tree with the roots sticking up out of the ground, and those roots were pure fatwood. Also, trees that just break over in the wind, even if the roots aren't sticking out of the ground, those stumps will usually have a good amount of fatwood in them. So those are the three easiest ways that I've found fatwood as I'm out in the woods. Pine knots, tree roots, tree stumps, all in the pine or any kind of coniferous tree. Also, if you find a dead tree, a dead pine tree that's down, and it's got lots of branches coming off of it, you can cut those branches out with your saw. You can go and cut those knots out of the trunk of the tree, and those are going to be full of fatwood. I've done that before too. One thing to consider is when you're using your tools cutting that fatwood, your knife, your saw blade, it gets covered in that fatwood. It's just the resin from the pine. The best way I've found to clean this is with denatured alcohol or acetone. And I keep denatured alcohol at my house. I use it for a lot of things. this saw blade is all gunked up with this fatwood and it won't cut as well. So it's important to keep it clean. And like I said, I use the denatured alcohol to clean it off, and it just dissolves that resin away and makes it super easy. I usually just get paper towel, soak it in a little denatured alcohol, and rub it, and it'll usually do fine. If it's gunked up in the teeth and you can't get it out, put the denatured alcohol on there and use an old toothbrush. But that denatured alcohol will dissolve that pine resin, and you can clean your tools really easily that way. Well, this has been fun. I always enjoy collecting fatwood, and it's super useful. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll be back soon with another one.